But let's just imagine we are now playing some sort of game where it would be useful to find a few good cards in the pack. For instance, an ace might be considered a good card. So by a process of estimation, by just looking through the pack, I need to get some idea of where there are some aces. So that with any luck I should then be able to cut more or less directly to one of the aces. Let's see how we can do that. Just trying to estimate the position of one of the aces, the ace of hearts. Quite a good way, obviously, to start off in a game. I should mention as I'm doing this that, of course, there are no breaks or marks around the side of the pack. It's merely a question of estimation. So if I were to cut a little bit higher up this time, just about here, we'd find another one of the aces, the ace of spades. Quite an advantage, as I say. Bear in mind, of course, every time I do this, there are fewer aces in the pack for me to cut to. So at least statistically, even if not dramatically, it does build to a certain extent. There's a third one. The fourth one, I have to be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure where it is. I have a reasonable idea, but can't guarantee it. So let's see. I think it's a little bit higher up. I'm going to say it's probably about here. And with any luck, that should be the six of spades, a well-known wild card in any game, as I'm sure. Maybe not. The six of spades, in fact, an indicator card, indicating this number 6, meaning that if from that very point I were to deal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the sixth card will be the last one of the aces. So that, I suppose, is the next best thing to do. So thank you very much. There were a few. So those were a few sort of basic ways of finding a few cards that might be of benefit. But having found them, of course, you have to arrange them so that they fall to you in a game. And there are a number of ways of doing this, ranging from the crude to the somewhat more sophisticated. So to start off at the bottom of the ladder would be a method of false shuffling, sometimes known as stacking of cards. So particularly in an overhand shuffle, something that one should always be careful of. If someone is shuffling the cards, it's quite possible for them actually to be counting the number of cards as they're shuffling. As you can see here, I'm actually counting the cards as they go past. Now, of course, in a real game, I wouldn't be looking at the cards with that amount of attention. I'd be sort of talking and looking around the room, not apparently paying much attention to what I'm doing, but in fact running up certain numbers of cards, running a few blocks of cards in particular orders, so that if I were to deal out, shall we say, 5 hands of cards, what should happen is that the card that falls to me, this one over here, would actually be one of the aces by means of that false shuffle. So again, if I were to deal another hand out, we'd find another one of the aces falls to me here. Once again, by dealing the third lot, that's number 3, and the last one, dealing very, very honestly, I think you'll notice here, that will then be all 4 of the aces, which is, as you can tell, is a slight advantage. Oh, thank you very much, thank you. Well, I'm very pleased to hear it. However, it is nonetheless quite a crude way of cheating. The reason being that, of course, that shuffling can provoke a certain amount of suspicion. So let's imagine that these aces are back in different parts of the pack. If I just riffle them in there and give them 1 or 2 cuts. Then supposing that somebody else were to cut the cards, could I trouble you just to reach across and cut the pack about in the middle for me? Wouldn't matter where you cut the cards. The reason it wouldn't matter is, of course, by now I do have the aces. I should have mentioned that earlier. Sorry, that was me cheating a little bit. But nonetheless, wherever you do cut the pack, at that point I could now surreptitiously add those aces onto the bottom of the pack, you see. And then in a casual game, hopefully no one would comment on this. You sometimes do see people playing in such a way that only half of the cards are being used. And now as I deal the cards out, the card that I'm dealing to myself is actually coming from the bottom. So if you watch the ace of diamonds here, I'll do it quite slowly, dealing apparently very slowly at fingertips, but nonetheless it's still possible to deal that ace of diamonds, and in fact all of the cards off the bottom, so that once again all 4 aces fall to me, which again is a slight advantage in certain games of cards. So that's a sort of a bottom deal. But nonetheless, in the fast company, of course, the fact that the cut is not completed would never be acceptable. And for that reason, people came up with the idea of, rather than dealing from the bottom, when the cards are cut and the cards that were on the bottom end up in the middle, surely it would be a good idea to deal them directly from the middle. So that now combines a number of techniques. If a card is in the middle, you would have to estimate its position and then try and deal it directly from that position. Now, to make it a little bit more interesting, I thought, if I were to put another ace in another position and another one in here, so that in fact these cards are in different positions in the middle of the pack here, you can see that there's not a fixed number of cards between them or anything. They are randomly spaced out in the middle of the pack. They're not next to specific cards or anything like that. But nonetheless, with any luck, I should still be able to estimate the positions of those cards sufficiently well that I can deal directly from those positions. Now, this is a question, as I say, not only of getting the dealing right, but also of trying to get the estimation as good as possible. So I can't guarantee, but I'll see how well the estimation went. Not bad, but in fact rather well, if I say so myself. That would be dealing from different parts in the centre of the pack, giving you again that slight edge over the opposition. I think you would have to agree. So that's a little sort of potted history of some of the main ways of cheating in a game of cards. Let me just show you one more, because this is a more contemporary version. Again, doing the same sort of thing of putting the aces back into different parts in the pack. And again, pushing them in square, making it very difficult to know where they are. I'm going to give them a shuffle, but much more about the sort of shuffle that people do use rather than one of those dodgy stacking type of shuffles. And of course the cards would have to be cut. When the cards are cut and then dealt, the idea is to keep everything as fair as possible. So do stop me if you see anything that looks suspicious, apart from the fact that I happen to have an ace in my hand. But nonetheless, I think you would agree, everything done in the fairest possible way, dealing the cards very slowly, having shuffled the cards very slowly, having put the cards back into genuinely different parts of the pack. And yet, nonetheless, we still seem to find that by some strange coincidence, I do have all 4 aces in my hand. Again, just that slight edge. But I know that by now you're thinking, presumably if one kept getting 4 aces in one's hand, people might think this was a little suspicious. People might stop betting quite as heavily. So for that reason, it's important to keep an eye on 1 or 2 other cards in the pack at the same time, so that as I'm shuffling the cards, I can actually see a few of the cards as they go by. And by these means of false shuffling, combined with the estimation that I've been talking about, it actually then becomes possible to put the cards into some sort of order, whereby I can then find a specific card if I wanted it. So again, if I give them just one more shuffle now, I think we should find that's probably just about done it. And that shuffle should mean that if I were to cut at exactly 26 cards, that on top of the pack there would now be a card that would go quite nicely if I hadn't had the ace of spades in my hand, that being the 2 of spades. After the 2 of spades, we should then have the 3, then the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, Jack, Queen, and King. In fact, every one of the spades in numerical order. And bear in mind, just a moment ago, thank you very much, I did spread the cards out and ask you to make sure that there was no order within the cards, and yet now within those last few shuffles, I think you will see that now every single one of the cards in this pack runs in perfect numerical order. That's all of the hearts, all of the clubs, and all of the diamonds, every one from the 2 through to the king.
Very good.
Thank you very much. Thank you.